Yes. So we're asking the question of, I just want to, sorry if I lost everyone for a minute there. So I'm going to do this again. What we discussed until now was the question of, I have sufficient light in my house. Is it justifiable to make a bracha on lighting a candle now? Because what's the candle doing here? And I tried showing three directions. One is an achinami, make the light insufficient, which, as we said, sounds a bit like a game. We didn't like it so much. Rav Sharon Buchu said, well, it adds an ambiance, it adds a certain vibe, which is a nice thing for Shabbat. So that's enough sufficient kavod Shabbat. And Rav Klein, who I think his direction is, you're making two brachot. One is on the ma'aseh that Chazal instituted, which is lighting a fire. And the other is on having sufficient light around the house. Now, the Tzitz Eliezer, I'm going to read you the original quote, because I think this is worthwhile. Ikara mitzvah, I'm reading in the middle of the paragraph, but this is the relevant part. Ikara mitzvah hi hapol yotze sheyehe or b'bayit b'shat achila. Right, l'shitato, right, according to the shita, so he goes through a few shitot, but l'shitato en shum pikpuk she'efshar shapir להדליק ner Shabbat בנר חשמלי, אף שאין עושים גוף עצם מעשה ההדלקה ופותחים רק מעבר להזרם. So, but the point is, the important thing is, to my understanding, Tzitz Eliezer says the reason you could light Shabbos candle, you can make a bracha. He says you could make a bracha according to most Rishonim, whatever. Later on, we'll see who might disagree. But according to most Rishonim, there's no problem lighting the Shabbos candles, lighting the electric lights and as Shabbos candles, right?
according to most Rishonim.
Well, what? Right.
It's funny to say according to most Rishonim.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Well, siftotehem dovevot bakevel, right? We discussed the idea. Right, we see that in many things, right? That Rishonim speak far ahead of their times, right? Rishonim were discussing whether. I'm sure I can give a bunch of examples. I'm not going to go there right now, but the point is, Rishonim, yeah. So, according to the Rishonim's point is the main point of the bracha is on ensuring that there's sufficient light. That's the main point of the bracha. And that's why you can make a bracha on electric light. Now, obviously, we try to maintain the original takana, but I mean, whatever. I don't give my wife a hard time about this. Don't worry. I have to worry about Shlom Bayit in that sense too. But I say, lumdishly, this bothers me. Lumdishly, I find this whole issue disturbing, because on the lumdish scale, it makes more sense to me to make a bracha on the electric lights than it does to make on the candles. Or as I set up my electricity, I make sure, the fridge light is off, those lights are on, everything's off, fine. Let's make a bracha on lighting this last, the switch that turns on the light that's over the Shabbos table. So Tzitz Eliezer says, yeah, you could do that. Rav Ovadia says you could do that. Yalkut Yosef says this should be implemented in many cases. If you have soldiers, right? I'll read the Yalkut Yosef. So just an example of you're in a tent on Shabbat. You shouldn't light candles. It's dangerous. So in that case, you should make a bracha on the electric light, and still make a bracha on Shabbat. Now again, to answer Yaakov's question, not because that there technically is fire inside the old halogen lights. You can make the same for LED or whatever, right? The same. It doesn't matter. The point is that you made sure there's sufficient light. Now, Shmirat Shabbat K'ilchata Kederko doesn't really like this, right? So smoch, but you can't make a bracha. I'm just saying, look, it's a big problem. On the one hand, it's very hard. It's very hard, and we don't like changing what Chazal said. But the question is, are we kind of turning the takana on its head? See, I worry that we're gonna have Tchiyat HaMetim, and Rav is gonna come, Abaye is gonna come and say, what is wrong with you people? The bracha is on making sure there's light around the house. Like, why are you doing this old-fashioned thing we used to do? You have much better light, right? The bracha you're making now is a mistake.
In honor of Daf Yomi, we can ask that also about Bdikat Chametz, right?
Right. Bdikat Chametz, yeah. Well, Bdikat Chametz is a whole, right. I definitely hear you. That's all yeah. So maybe before Pesach, we'll have a thing about that. It's Chanukah's coming up, which means Pesach's coming up too. So,
also Chanukah, maybe we should light. I remember in Yerushalayim once they showed us a tshuva of somebody who said that in the third Beit HaMikdash, the menorah will be electric.
Right, I remember there was a discussion about that. Yitachen, look, Chanukah candles, I think now more than ever, that's the interesting thing about Chanukah, now more than ever, I think it's better, there's more of an inyan to makbid on using olive oil and not anything else. Because the only real justification to use oil and candles nowadays is Zecher LaMikdash, to say, this is the way the Nes was done. This is the way the miracle was done. To then take paraffin oil and use that seems a bit funny to me. It's like, I have better things than paraffin if you want. I have this electricity. I have lead lights. I have, right? That's why now more than ever, I think there's more of an inyan to makbid on dafka using olive oil. But anyway, I'm saying the Shema Chagil Chata says I want to maintain the original Takanam. That's why it's very hard for him to accept the electric candles, the electric lights as Shabbos candles. On the other hand, I just if just to balance things out a bit, I just thinking a bit more about this takana, it occurred to me, why specifically on this? So having light on Shabbos is very important. Fine, fair enough. Now, but why is there a special takana and special bracha specifically on this aspect of Kavod Shabbat? I mean, Dr. Ellis, if we were making a takana today on something you prepare for Shabbat, it would be on preparing the challenge, right?
The wrong person.
Wrong person. All right.
I don't want to admit my views about challenge to you. I think we have a good relationship.
I'm concerned we'd have to say that you're the Balamor as
let's just not talk about it. Yeah.
Let's leave that. But I think the issue of the candles and the lighting was so unique in Chazal's time that's what made it worthy of a bracha. I think the necessity that everyone will have sufficient lighting at home was something that was very unique. You always had, you always tried to have food, so this food, that food, but specifically making sure that you have sufficient lighting at home at night was something that it wasn't always easy to accomplish, and that's why I justified its special takana. Nowadays, I don't think such a takana, anyone would create such a takana. It's like, of course you have light on at home at night. Like, what's wrong with you? I see all of you. It's night by, well, maybe not by Rav Baruch, but it's night by most of you. And I see the lights are on. I turned the light behind me off so you guys won't have a glare behind me. I turned the light behind me off. But nowadays, I don't think such takana would exist. So again, I'm not sure exactly what I do with all this. My bottom line is that on the one hand, I very much identify, I very much understand and appreciate the Rav Sternbuch's view that says we're gonna have to, we'll have to pivot. That what we mean by kavod, from just having sufficient light to having a more serious, more invested Suda. The Rav Klein view that says the bracha really is on having all the lights on, but once you say that, you very quickly get the Tzitz Eliezer and Rav Avadia and say, yeah, so you can make a bracha on the electric candles, electric lights as Shabbos candles, v'zeu. I understand why Shvat Chata has trouble and says, well, only in extreme cases. I'll point out also Likud Yosef, even though Ravadi seems to say that it's fine, still Likud Yosef says, well, but still don't change the minhag. In other words, we're still uncomfortable changing the minhag ultimately. But Kitzer. So